Okay. All right. Thank you everyone for coming out tonight, and welcome to Books Inc. We are the West's oldest independent bookstore. And so tonight we are having a panel of authors reading their selections from the anthology tonight. And then we should still have time for questions, answer time afterward. And then you will be able to get books signed if you wanted to do that. We have the books for sale at the register if you haven't picked one up already. So thank you all for coming.
First of all, thank you all for coming tonight. This is a treat for me for a lot of different reasons. I host a literary series called, or salon if you will, called Peninsula Parlour, where we bring in authors once a month. Our next one is June 17th, and we have Ayelet Waldman coming to talk about her new book, which I'm just in the middle of and loving. So for me, I'm usually on the receiving end of this experience. I get to interview, and I get to challenge, and I get to question, but now I get to read, and I'm a little nervous about that, so this will be fun. I started Peninsula Parlour because I really wanted to have a literary experience down here and wasn't seeing it, so I actually started in my home, and then it grew and grew and grew, and now it's here, which is so exciting. I'm so grateful to Books Inc. for making their place available for this. We also did it in partnership with a local nonprofit called Abilities United, and so tonight, and Abilities United works with developmentally challenged children and adults to help them live full, rich lives. So 50% of the proceeds of anything you buy in the store tonight helps support Abilities United, so shop away. I'm going to let all the authors speak to read for themselves and introduce themselves, but Ariana Huffington is so in love with it, she keeps tweeting from the essays, so I'm kind of into that. So anyways, on that, I'll let you guys start. I'll end the event.
Hi. Thank you, everyone who is going to buy a book. My name is Christine Beirne, and I live in Menlo Park with my husband and two beautiful daughters and our mischievous dog. And before I read a few excerpts from my essay, I would like to just take a moment to thank Mickey Nelson, who's not here tonight but is in spirit, and everyone in the Nothing But the Truth family. Their devotion and their vision is truly remarkable, and it has been an honor to be a part of the project. And please go and buy many copies. This is called Staring Down. I caught a woman looking down my shirt yesterday. I was leaning over my bike, fiddling with the row of numbers on my lock. The top of my gray sweatshirt was gaping open, and since I had forgotten my reading glasses, the securing process was taking a while. She really had time to stare. When our eyes met, I wanted to tell her things, details I had no business relating to a total stranger. I was almost grateful when she pretended to be absorbed by the zipper on her jacket. Otherwise, I might have said something. I had considered reconstruction. I was ignorant about the details and couldn't fathom a life without breasts. A friend who had been through a similar diagnosis a few years prior phoned me and said, "I'm really happy with my results. You can come over and look if you want." I spent hours online studying pictures and reading blogs. Autologous tissue surgery is an inaccurate term. The word should be surgeries, as in at least 2 surgeries, sometimes 5. Last week at my younger daughter's preschool, it was my turn to stare. Another mom and I were crawling around on the floor, and I could not avert my eyes. Her breasts, supported by lavender lace, were achingly beautiful, and my heart sank as I pictured the abandoned top drawer of my dresser. The intensity of my envy made me blush and look away. Post-chemotherapy, I was no longer a good candidate for flap surgery. Implants were my only option. A friend came with me to the plastic surgeon's office, turning her chair sideways when it was time to open my gown. The doctor cupped my naked right breast casually, almost flippantly. He said if I decided to keep it, he could alter it to match the new one. His eyes narrowed as he examined me, his hands lifting my breast up an inch in order to demonstrate his vision of my future. "We can fix this droop pretty easily," he said. "By the time we're done, you'll match quite nicely." His words were meant to reassure me, maybe even cheer me up a bit. I was bald and weak and mourning my dead mother, but I would get a better body. I could still look good in clothes. But even through the fog of chemo, the more I learned about reconstruction, the more deeply I understood that it would not aid my healing. Neither implants nor microsurgery would make me feel whole again. The surgeons, with all their talent and skill, would be operating on the wrong part of my body. It was my heart and mind that would need restructuring, and only I could do that. As I slowly began to untangle from the barbed wire of treatment, the decision to decline both implants and prosthetics was, for me, the most authentic way to walk forward. I have friends who have chosen a different path, and I absolutely support those choices. I don't see myself as a radical, flat activist. On the other hand, I don't feel compelled to appear as if everything is fine. Everything is not fine. Breast cancer took my mother in November, my hair in December, and my breasts in February. The sharp blade of my grief could shred all the world's pink ribbons into a million tiny pieces. If you attend a Komen rally or an Avon walk, you might spot a t-shirt that reads, "Yeah, they're fake, the real ones tried to kill me." I understand why a woman would come to distrust and resent her breasts, but I never felt that way. My breasts were a beloved, powerful part of my womanhood. They produced copious amounts of milk for my daughters and provided me intense sexual pleasure. I miss them terribly, and my mourning process will be lengthy. I did not want this body. I did not ask for this loss. But the truth of cancerous ferocity is a story worth telling, even if the narrative sometimes makes me cry. My closet has also had its share of goodbyes. Gone are the turtleneck sweaters or anything with a V-neck. My favorite sweatshirt is too big for me now, yet I continue to reach for it, soothed by its bulky silhouette. I can appear almost normal in its gray folds, so normal that I sometimes forget to be careful when bending down. The extra fabric shields me from the raised eyebrows of strangers in the supermarket. It insulates me against unexpected gusts of melancholy when I catch a glimpse of my reflection in store windows. This morning, my 6-year-old daughter came into my room while I was getting dressed. Normally, these intrusions are quick round trips from the playroom. She requests the hole punch or wants to know how to spell hammerhead shark, and then she's off again, legs and mind whirling. This time she lingered, and I felt her gaze on my chest, a place she has seen thousands of times. I breastfed her past her 2nd birthday. I was nursing her younger sister at the time of my diagnosis. "Mom, are your scars always going to be there?" "Yes, honey. They'll fade as time goes on, but they'll always be visible. Do they bother you?" "No. I have a scar too. Remember that time I fell at Grandpa's house? It was a really big cut, remember? I needed 3 Band-Aids." She sits down on the floor and pushes up one leg of her ladybug pants. Her hands cradle her knee as she squints at the thin pink line I can barely discern. Her movements are slow, her expression tender. My daughter has long since forgiven her body for its trespass. "See it, Mommy? See it? No, it's okay. It's okay. It doesn't hurt. And it reminds me of the time I was really brave." She leaves and I am left alone, standing shirtless in front of my full-length mirror. I bring my hands up to my chest, trace the scalpel's path with wistful fingers. Legend tells of Amazon women who never had to weep over the terse syntax of a pathology report. They willingly sacrificed their breasts to improve their prowess with bow and arrow. But when I finally meet my own gaze, no warrior looks back at me. just a pragmatic pacifist with a short haircut. I turned to face my closet. For weeks after the mastectomy, I could manage only shirts with buttons up the front. Today, the t-shirt slides down easily over straight arms. Out of habit, I look around for my gray sweatshirt, but after a few seconds, I give up searching. The day is bright and sunny, and my daughter is calling me from the next room. I decide to leave it behind.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Bush. During the day, I write website copy. And at night, I write blog copy at a blog called Anybody Want a Peanut. This is the second time I've had an opportunity to read for this anthology, and it's an honor. My piece is called Becoming Special. About a week after my son was born, some friends came to meet the new baby. Kathy, who also had an infant, made herself comfortable in an armchair, threw a blanket over her shoulder, and started nursing. She looked at me, smiled, and said, "Wouldn't you just jump in front of a bus for him?" I didn't want to admit how tired and frazzled I was. Everything, including that natural act of nursing, had been a challenge, and I hadn't quite warmed up to the whole thing. I nodded my head and said something along the lines of, "Uh-huh." My transition into the joys of motherhood took a little while, but I did adjust. I learned how to click the infant carrier out of the car and into the stroller. I wore my baby to the grocery store and stocked the freezer with homemade organic purees. My son and I went to play dates and music classes, and at 4 months to the day, we began sleep training. And soon enough, I loved my chubby baby with jump in front of a bus ferocity. And then, just about the time I was becoming comfortable in my role as mother, a woman with a white coat and distinct Canadian accent looked at me and said, "Your son has autism." Once again, I found myself not quite sure how to feel. Only this time, I had no time to get used to the idea of being a special needs parent. There was no transition about it. While there was no denying the diagnosis, I couldn't quite make sense of the words I had just heard. There is an essay often given to parents of newly diagnosed special needs kids called Welcome to Holland. In the essay, you prepare for a trip to Italy. You read up on the culture, pack the right clothes, even learn some of the language. You board the plane. But when you disembark, you are in Holland. Holland is a beautiful place with windmills and tulips and lovely people. But you were supposed to go to Italy. Pasta, gelato, buongiorno. And now you see only wooden shoes and salted herring. After my son Wesley's diagnosis, he seemed a stranger to me. In a single instant, he went from a happy, mellow toddler to a kid whose entire future was uncertain. Would he ever speak? Have friends? Go to prom? Yes, in those first days I thought about high school prom, that silly yet quintessential hallmark of adolescence. Even the terminology sounded all wrong. How do I describe my son? What reason do I give when I explain that we can't go to playdates anymore because he has 25 hours a week of therapy? I practiced when I met new people. He has special needs. He's developmentally delayed. He's autistic. I started reading blogs by people who called themselves autism moms or special needs moms. Was that me? I mean, I don't have the special needs. How could this be my life? And all the things people said to make me feel better only made me angry. God only gives you what you can handle. Everything happens for a reason. Special kids go to special parents. I resented all of it. I didn't want special. I didn't want different. I just wanted my son back. I spent hours looking for cures, researching diets or methodologies that would help my son recover. I read blog after blog about kids who accomplished so much more than the experts said they would. They graduated from college. They got married. Some of them even went to prom. And every so often, Wesley would do something so normal that I knew in the core of my being he would be okay. He too would be a success story. In the now 5 years since Wesley's diagnosis, I'd like to say that things have gotten easier for us. I want to share with you that story of amazing progress, of undiscovered talents and remarkable beauty. But that's not our story. In many ways, things have gotten harder. My son, who is approaching 7 years old, doesn't speak. He's not toilet trained. He can be aggressive and often goes for weeks without sleeping through the night. But some transitions happen no matter how hard we fight them. I'm no longer a tourist in this foreign country. I know the terminology and am able to throw around acronyms with the best of them. I've learned to speak Dutch, as it were. I've become adept at advocating for Wesley's needs and have immersed myself in local and online communities of special needs moms. I'm no longer trying to cure my son or make him into the normal child I expected to have. I wear proudly the title of Autism Mom, just as I want Wesley to grow to be a proud autistic adult. I am Wesley's mom. It is a special role, indeed.
Hi, my name is Kim Festa. I've flown in from New Jersey, Oakland, New Jersey, actually, so hence the accent. During the day, I'm a third grade teacher, and I've never written anything before this piece. And I really toyed about telling my story, and I asked myself two questions. The first question I asked is, what will happen if I tell it? But more importantly, I asked myself, what would happen if I don't tell this story? My story is called Age of Consent. Eleanor Roosevelt was sadly mistaken. No one could make you feel inferior without your consent, she said. With all due respect, Mrs. Roosevelt, I never really consented to anything. At age 5, I never knew that I had a choice. There were only the taut, puppeteering strings of intimidation and coercion, and the inherent inferiority that dwells inside those who endure the silent shame and denigration of sexual abuse. I never asked why he did it. I just assumed it was because I was less worthy, less deserving, less human, inferior, irrespective of consent. By the time I reached 3rd grade, I had already buried that reality deep and prayed that no one would ever detect its sickening, decomposing existence. Like those molded plastic sand art creations I made at school, I submerged that abominable scent block of a truth under alternating layers of artificially rainbow-colored granules. I knew nothing about being powerful, being beautiful, or being hopeful until she called me over to her desk that morning. Miss Daniela beckoned me, calling my name as if it held some dignitarial importance. Kim, please come to my desk when you finish your work. My body stiffened in that cold metal desk chair, preparing for the onslaught of criticism that I had come to expect. The inventory of my faults continually rotated in my mind like the cards of a Rolodex. Ugly, sloppy, irresponsible, impure, less. A steel, unbuckling infrastructure of deceptive messages constructed the empty shell in which I resided, an abandoned carcass that hid any vestiges of innocence. At age 8, unblemished promises of childhood lay in tatters at my feet. During this time, I fried chicken cutlets for my siblings and folded mountains of underwear and towels. I tried to protect my family from being swallowed whole by his unrelenting Scotch-fueled rage. At 8, I had been thrust into the innermost edges of his maelstrom, the place where his most punishing winds persisted. As a recipient of sexual, emotional, and verbal abuse, I had learned to just hold on tight, no questions, no reflection, and no consent, just survival. I couldn't tell anyone, and didn't want to tell anyone, because I subsisted in a spiral of terror and filthy shame, the kind that permeates the very fabric of your essence. What could my teacher possibly want to talk to me about? Did she know? Her tone was different that day. Children always know. I always knew. Tugging at my plaid Catholic school jumper, I shuffled over to Miss Daniela's desk. Hang on, weather. Her sky blue eyes were a welcome invitation, assuring me that I was not in trouble, that I had done something right. I have something to give you, Kim. Something that I have been meaning to give you for a while now, she remarked. I watched as her portly hand delved into the metal desk drawer. What emerged was a little red journal with the floral gold design on its hardbound cover. I bought this for you. She placed the hardcover book into my unfurled hands. I loved how newly stiff it felt, untarnished and unsullied. I clung to the solace of every gentle syllable she directed at me. There were a momentary relief from the soul-breaking winds to which I had grown accustomed. What is this for? I asked, Read the first page. She must have sensed my reluctance and nodded for me to pull back the cover. Her words were delivered in red ink, but bore none of the usual punitive intent. My dear Kim, you are a good writer. Maybe to the earth you are a dot, but you can think and write, and the earth cannot. Write down some of your thoughts and feelings, and maybe someday you just might be a poet. I peeled my eyes from the sharp peaks of each handwritten word and looked directly at her face. Maybe she knew, maybe not. It didn't matter. What mattered most in that moment was that someone understood, someone reached out, and someone dared to cajole the bunkered voice out of a little girl who never even knew that she was entitled to have one. In that framed moment, I began my lifelong transition for the embalmer of a terrible family secret to someone who uncovered the galvanizing power of words and voice. When Miss Daniela handed me that journal, she gave me the courage to speak and to heal and to forgive. As years passed, I clung to that journal and to the notion that Miss Daniela thought that I, despite being poor, abused, and neglected, could change my life with an education and unfetter myself from ill-fated statistics with my own transformative thoughts. I recall that notion when I won a scholarship to a private all-girls high school, and when I sat in an adult survivors group in New York when I was 15, and when I left home and never returned for Boston University and Università di Padova, and graduated magna cum laude, and when I walked on stage to accept my master's degree from Harvard, and when I was featured in a magazine for helping my own student, a teenage mother, discover the power of her own voice too. In such moments, I remember Miss Daniela's face, hear her voice, and see the gold-flecked cover of that little red journal. In other moments, I remember those who manipulate, desecrate, and undermine beautiful and burgeoning spirits to make others feel less worthy and inferior. At age 41, I understand that, but I no longer give my consent. Thank you.
You want to fight for it? Is it first? But it's
C, D, F,
G,
G,
H. That's here.
You know, here's the thing about writers is like they get a published thing and like, you know, it's like, no, I'm just teasing. Nancy Kho, awesome writer.
But it starts with a K.
But it starts with a K, and I'm sorry, I'm Jane Ganahl with a G. I'm Jane Ganahl. I have been a journalist for about almost 35 years with the Hearst newspapers in the city. Then freelance, I started a little festival called Litquake, which is now huge. And I have 2 books. One of them was a amusing memoir I wrote about turning 50, and then I also edited an anthology of women writers too, so I feel right at home here. And I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be in this collection. It's as you have heard, it's very powerful, a lot of amazing voices, a lot of different things, a lot of different transitions. Mine is a little less heavy than some of the others have gone before, but I think if you're a single woman, it might resonate with you. The title is Single Mother of the Bride. An engagement party for my daughter is winding down. Family members embrace each other before heading forth exuberantly into the summer air, lifted by the tangible evidence, the heirloom ring Erin now sports on her ring finger, of true love. An elderly aunt turns to me, the mother of the future bride, hugs me tightly and whispers in my ear, "I'm sure there's another ring in your future, and that your own day will come again." God, I blurt out with a chuckle, I hope not. My aunt pulls back, her smile fading, and I catch my daughter's eye nearby. She shakes her head and stifles a grin. She knows that there is no greater joy for me than to see her headed to the altar with a wonderful man. She also knows I have no such desire for myself. Nope, I'll never marry again, and I'll have a fabulous life anyway. I write this with a smile, pleased that after bouts of feeling bereft at being single, I can finally lay claim to this truth. I am happier this way. What has changed since my 40s? Since my second divorce and subsequent self-esteem implosion caused me to incessantly check the schedule for the next bus to the altar and test drive man after man for marital suitability. Did I become bitter? Do I hate men now? Not at all. It's simple, really. As I got older, I'm now at an age, which Gail Sheehy calls the age of mastery, when self-awareness finally trumps societal expectations. When you can take your own weaknesses without apologizing for them. When you can take the dreams of a giddy youth and hang them on the wall in a pretty frame that honors what they meant to you, even though that meaning is now gone. Take men, for example. Despite my affection for the species, I have let go of all fantasies surrounding them, that they can fix my messy life or make me brilliantly happy. And in fact, I've concluded that I'm happier without one, at least the husband kind of man. I know this flies in the face of family values. I know most of the world thinks I should be married. But I've been there, done that, and these years find more joy in non-wifely things. Sharing laughs with close women friends, reading tonight with all of you, the sea breeze in my face when I walk the bluffs, organizing literary events, writing into the night. And yes, watching Erin take flight, even if that flight takes her down the aisle and into a land from which I am a refugee. I think part of my alienation from the marriage myth is because I was not a good wife. Sure, I bent over backwards to make sure both my husbands were happy and fed and well cared for. But like so many married women who bought into this myth, I bent over so far backward that I finally snapped like a twig with anger and resentment. Both husbands, champions of non-communication, turned away from my relentless unhappiness, and I withered on the vine. If not for my daughter's cheerful affections, I probably would have died of loneliness. To quote Germaine Greer, many a housewife staring at the back of her husband's newspaper or listening to his breathing in bed is lonelier than any spinster in a rented room. After my split with husband number 2, I realized that la vida sola might actually be fun, and that there was liberation in having no one to answer to but myself. I soon forgot about the quest for husband number 3 and instead threw myself into becoming an expert single woman. I networked like mad, rediscovered the importance of female friendships, bought a book about home repair, and took up a cause. I didn't stop until my life was about something bigger than men. Do I have the single life mastered? I don't think that's possible any more than it is to truly master the married life. So on I sail, sometimes nearly capsizing in the turbulent seas of solo life. But oh my goodness, what joys it also affords. Deciding to ignore Saturday housework in favor of driving down the coast to a flea market, ignoring the healthy ingredients I bought for a spinach salad, and instead having frozen waffles for dinner. Having single friends over for a Jane Austen night, saying goodnight to a lover and sending him home because we both sleep better alone. These things I've learned are far more me than marriage, as is being mother of the bride. Who knew it could be this much fun? Erin has learned from watching me that she could have a lovely life even without the white dress and diamond ring. But she is choosing marriage because she chooses her wonderful Jonathan, not because wedded bliss is the only kind of bliss. And for that, I am blissful indeed. Thank you.
Hello. Very glad to be here from the East Coast as well. My name is Rose Gordy. I was formerly known as Sister Mary Raymond. Right now I'm a veteran writer and a dream workshop facilitator. In a way, all of our lives are waking dreams. Mine certainly has been one, especially my early years as a nun that I wrote about in my essay, The World, the Flesh, and the Devil. My high school boyfriend begged me not to enter. He said over and over again that he needed me, and that I could save my soul in the world. But I couldn't listen to his pleas. 3 weeks after I turned 18, I left home forever to be essentially cut off from the world, the flesh, and the devil by entering a convent in western Pennsylvania. I died to the world as a daughter, a girlfriend, and a silly teenage girl, but was reborn into a new life as a nun under the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience. A new life where everything was done on a schedule by bell or chime or clock, from waking to praying to eating and finishing eating to recreating to sleeping. As a sister of mercy, I followed the rule which encompassed numerous and arcane directives. For example, the 9 p.m. grand silence, when at the toll of a large bell, everyone ceased talking, even midway through a word, and didn't speak again until after breakfast the next morning, unless it was a holiday. Another rule was keeping custody of the eyes. Bet you can't believe what that is, which meant we didn't look directly at anyone. Always kept our eyes down like that. We were not allowed to talk to lay people, those who were not nuns or priests, without extenuating circumstances. We could not use an object except for its intended purpose. We couldn't visit our fellow nuns in their cells, as our bedrooms were called, because there was fear of particular friendships, a euphemism for a word we never spoke, lesbianism. We didn't have any regular clothes, including anything with color. We were not allowed to possess or wear anything feminine. No scented soaps, no silk undergarments. We were not permitted to seal our letters to our parents so that they could be read by our superiors. No radio, no newspapers, no TV. We also had to perform a daily particular examen for our sins, a weekly confession, and a monthly chapter of faults, where each of us announced to the rest of the community some violation of the rule, like talking at the wrong time of the day. In those first 6 years, there were days I was so serious about following this rule that I felt guilty for the ones who didn't. I embraced my new life completely, without question. Yet, in many ways, especially during those early years, I was relatively happy. But in the second 6 years, I did start to realize I wasn't meant for this life, that maybe I had been fooling myself for a long time. When my decision was made, I had to get a letter from Rome releasing me from my 3 vows. But fortunately, I didn't have to undergo the usual psychological testing before being permitted to leave. And so I did at age 30 with a BA, an MA, and 8 years of teaching experience, all leading to a promising future. Today I ask myself, can anyone ever leave the world, the flesh, and the devil, as I was brainwashed to believe I did all those years ago? I wrote the following poem, which is in my collection of poetry, Stairs to the Attic, to live along into that answer. What is life but the living of it? A way of awakening, a dawn. We wander far from ourselves, only to find it there in us all the while.
What I'm going to say is, on the brighter note, I didn't try to wrestle the nun for her spot. You would have taken me down anyway. My name is Nancy Davis Kho, that's with a K, and I am a writer in Oakland, and I write for the San Francisco Chronicle and a couple of other publications. I also have a blog called Midlife Mixtape for the years between being hip and breaking one. And I really want to thank you all for coming out on a weeknight to a place that sells physical books. Bookstores are the lifeblood of our communities, and I'm so grateful that so many people recognize that. Please, if you don't buy our book tonight, buy a book and make sure that Books Inc. will be here. I, for one, will be looking at the music section over here, and I can give lots of recommendations. I've read many of these, so. I'm going to read my essay called Into the Driver's Seat. In 3 short months, my oldest daughter will officially be 15 and a half and entitled to a learning permit for her California driver's license. When she was an infant, I thought I'd dread the moment I'd have to release her to the open roads. Turns out, not so much. Part of my willingness to see her transition into the driver's seat is a product of the desperation that comes from 4 years of driving her and her younger sister back and forth to their classes at ballet school. The girls don't always attend the same classes because that would be convenient. So even with sporadic carpooling, we're talking about a dozen round trips between the house and the ballet studio each week. The station wagon and I follow the 7-minute route faithfully, to the point where I suspect my car could teach Google a thing or two about self-driving automobiles. I'm thankful to anyone who will help break the monotony of chauffeuring, even if it's a kid who is still in braces and might sing One Direction songs into the gear shift. Another factor in my lack of consternation is that my daughter continues to mature into an older version of the sensible, risk-averse girl she has always been. At 5, while learning to ride her bike, she'd first make sure the white plastic basket attached to the handlebars was fully stocked with Band-Aids. Then, and only then, would she strap on her helmet and head grimly down the street, little legs pumping beneath her. She never forgets her house key, always has her bus pass, and will not even try a new dessert unless someone taste tests it first. My guess is that she'll check her blind spot 6 times before making a lane change. Maybe it's that I'm a little too trusting of blind luck, and here I speak of the strangers into whose cars I regularly climb thanks to the only in the Bay Area casual carpool phenomenon. I'm explaining this to the East Coasters right here. Casual carpool operates like a free taxi service, enabling drivers to load up 2 passengers so they can cross the Bay Bridge in the less congested carpool lane and pay a reduced toll, while providing a free ride to commuters who queue up in an orderly line in advance 2x2. It's genius when the driver obeys the rules of the road. But everyone who participates in it has a casual carpool horror story to whip out during a dinner party. Of the lady in the powder blue Corolla who putters along at 35 miles per hour as 6 lanes of traffic whip by her on going 70, the cigar-smoking driver in the Cadillac, or the jackass who steers with his knees while cradling his phone in one hand and using the other to fiddle with the radio station. Still, I haven't been mangled in a car accident yet. But I think the real reason I've lost my reservations about my daughter getting her driver's license is that in the 2 years since she became a teen, I've realized that driving is the sole activity for a fledgling adult that comes with a concrete set of expectations and reinforcement from the legal community, not to mention seatbelts and airbags. Navigating high school is at least as hazardous as driving a car, but its utter lack of security features make an 85 Yugo look like an armored tank. Of course, I talk to my daughter about safe sex, responsible drinking, and online predators until I am blue in the face. She could probably give those lectures herself, verbatim. But wouldn't it be nice if there was something more than an arbitrary age minimum for alcohol use, so you'd know your kid passed a multiple choice test on substance abuse administered by the state before taking that first sip? That airbags would deploy and punch a lecherous man in the nuts before he initiated a fateful interaction with your naive teenage daughter? That if kids participated in risky behaviors online, a virtual policeman would swoop onto the scene, maybe from a hidden chat window, and suspend their right to type for 60 days? And those are the easy issues with my daughter, where at least I can clearly articulate what her dad and I consider acceptable standards of behavior. As a parent of a teen, I'm continually confronted by issues where there isn't such a black and white answer, where my words of wisdom, such as they are merely my best guess at saying the appropriate thing. Friendship dramas, academic choices, family dynamics, I never expected to find myself so tongue-tied so often as a parent, scrabbling not just for the right advice, but for the right delivery, so that I don't give her the impression that I lack faith in her ripening judgment. I wish I had a map I could give her that shows landmarks like True Blue Friends and Respectful Boys and Dead-End Jobs and Knuckleheads, Road Closed, Detour. It would be so much easier to hand her a spiral-bound study guide of road signs to memorize that would help guide her safely into adulthood. But we're talking about the fluid and shape-changing beast that is normal human development, the alternately dark and joyous places you have to pass through to become a grown-up. Sometimes, when the house is full of the ecstatic, gleeful energy that only a high school freshman girl can muster, I think being a teen is like Anaheim. Nice place for a short visit, but I wouldn't want to live there. I have no reason to doubt my kid. She's made great choices so far. Even so, I know she needs to hit a few bumps, run out of gas, and take some wrong turns in the process of moving from the passenger seat of childhood to the driver's seat of her adult life. It's important that my husband and I give her plenty of room to fail and learn until she gets it right. So as I get accustomed to my new role riding shotgun, I try not to pump invisible brakes or white knuckle the dashboard as she confidently takes the wheel. And I have to say, she got her driver's permit yesterday. I will ask you for advice.
So I am just so awed by the beautiful writing. It's incredible. Let me start with, as I said, I just got my copy and I was thrilled to see I was the first essay in sex and marriage. As Jane was mastering singlehood, I was mastering or trying to master marriage. I wrote this essay really as a love letter to my husband, who's here taking pictures. Hello, husband. You can imagine my surprise when I got a call from the publisher asking, the lawyer wanted to know, so are they still married? Clearly something was lost in translation. I'll let you decide. It's called Staying the Course. I didn't think we would do it. We'd been blustering at each other all day, surfacing old wounds, adding a few new ones just for good measure. It might have seemed like a typical power struggle between a long married couple, but somehow the cuts felt deeper this time, more definitive, more dangerous. So when my husband called out from the kitchen, "Time to kayak," my instinct was to say no. But perhaps old habits do die hard, because it could only have been habit that had me grabbing my oar and heading to the water. It certainly wasn't him. For the past decade, we'd spent the month of July in a small summering community called Annisquam. It's about an hour north of Boston, far from our home in California. For the first half of the month, the children and I would settle into a hazy routine of sailing camp, tennis matches, idle afternoons sailing and sunning at the beach. Then, during the last 2 weeks of July, my husband would come and stay. On those evenings when the tide was right, he and I kayaked together along the coves and inlets around the bay near our beloved summer home. During the winters in soggy, or right now not so soggy, California, we longed for those seemingly innocuous excursions, the picturesque coastline, the stolen moments alone, the chance to talk through deeper issues. While our oars dipped in and out, we discussed careers, money, children, family, friends, life. It seemed, each year, big decisions were made out there on the generally placid water. Summer kayaking had become our own marital catharsis. On this night, as we pulled our kayaks from the perches, the evening air was thick and sticky. There was a breeze, but nothing we couldn't navigate or hadn't before. Silently, we eased our kayaks into the water and rode the tide out past the cove and round the point, along down the rocky shore. Black cormorants dipped their heads in and out of the water, matching the dance of our oars, in out, in out, in out. About a mile down, I turned my kayak towards my husband's and said, "We need to talk." He'd heard this line before. These conversations showed up with some regularity, usually tied to important events, birthdays, anniversaries, or the news of yet another divorce from some seemingly happy marriage. This year we were celebrating a triple whammy. We each were turning 50, and our 25th wedding anniversary was only weeks away. All these years, I secretly still had lingering doubts about us, about him. My husband shook his head and looked out across the water, watching as the sun fell below dark purple clouds hanging above the horizon. Enough talking already? Let's just appreciate right here, right now, he said, and then glided his kayak on ahead, ignoring my calls for him to wait, slow down. I was still ready for a fight, even if he wasn't. As I raced to catch him, the sky suddenly grew darker. The purple clouds became various measures of gray and black. The once gentle breeze blustered across the ocean's surface, forcing the water to dance and roll. "We'd better go back," my husband shouted over the rising storm. "It's getting too rough out here." He kayaked fast ahead of me, pushing across the current, his sun-baked arms bulging with the effort. "Wait," I called to him again, this time more from fear than anger. But he kept his pace, putting more distance between us. So typical. Why did he always seem to abandon me just when I needed him most? I cursed at my husband, boiling over with long-held frustrations and simmering resentments. "All these goddamn years, how is it I'm still married to you?" I yelled into the wind. Back when we were first married in the mid-1980s, the headlines warned that statistically speaking, a career woman was more likely to remain single than be killed by a terrorist. So, when my boyfriend proposed, I took the cautious route and said yes. My best friend asked if I was sure. I told her, "I'm not looking for perfect. He's good enough." "Aren't you afraid you're settling?" she asked. "Don't worry," I said, only half jokingly. "This is my starter marriage. Think of him as my placeholder husband. Worst case scenario, I'd make the requisite mistakes, fall down, get up, brush myself off, and try again with someone else. Perhaps a better match. When the time comes," I assured her, "I'll move on." But the time never came. Our jobs, the children, the busyness that is life kept me from focusing on my exit strategy. In my heart, though, I harbored the fantasy I could jump ship at any moment. Freedom would taste sweet. As my kayak bounced back and forth, I cried out to the waves, "And so what if I haven't left yet? I could still go. I could!" I slumped over, tasting the salty water that ran in rivulets down my cheeks. Tears and sea. A bitter slap of wind and rain pellets caused me to look up. As I had been scrutinizing our marriage, my stalwart husband had stayed the course. Now I'm going to cry. Slowly making progress against the elements. He was like that. Always had been. Driven, reliable, calm in a crisis. I'm more prone to ups and downs, attracted to drama, even a little reckless. "You're the excitement," he often told me. If opposites attract, we were the definition of that old cliche. I watched in the distance, moving farther and farther away, and with sudden clarity realized my never-wavering husband was far more than a placeholder. He was, and always had been, home to me. I began paddling hard, head down, trying to catch up. But each time I pushed ahead, the gale and rising waves pushed back. My arms strained. I couldn't make it. I was exhausted and defeated. It was time to give up. Better let the tide take me where it would than fight the current that was forcing us farther apart. And then, my husband was there beside me. "Don't stop," he said. "We can do this." He raised his oar high and plunged it into the swell. Raise it again and plunge it on the other side, or in, or out, or in. I began to follow his movements, and soon we were advancing towards the shore. It took all of our effort, but we were winning this battle together. Eventually we rounded the point, managed to steer into the cove. The water calmed, and the angry wind petered out to a manageable breeze. The rain softened as our kayaks beached feebly on land. My husband jumped out and dragged his to safety. I sat in mine, too exhausted to move. "I didn't expect it to be so hard," I cried, my crimped fingers aching from the death grip that had molded around the oar. My husband reached down and gently eased my hands into his and helped me get up. "Sometimes it's like that," he said. Then he picked up my kayak, and he pulled it to safety too.
Will he be signing
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I think we'll keep them. We might have different ideas. Thank you all for coming. Here's the good news, we're already sold out. Here's the bad news, we're already sold out. We have a few still left. Don't rush fast. But Sarah did say that she'd be happy to take orders from here rather than from any other place like Amazon. So please order them here, and we'll come to your house and sign them. And then please wine, cheese, mingle, enjoy yourself. We'll stay as long as possible, and we'll help Sarah clean up at the end. Thank you all for being here. If you're interested in finding more about the Peninsula Parlour, please let me know, and we'll have a sign up at the front desk. And buy books tonight, because it does help Abilities United. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good show.
Yeah,
Good show. Here, look at
We should make it, let's go
closer to the podium.
so that get the book sign in it too.
Exactly.
That's it, right?
Ken, we need yours.
Where's the other one? There's another
Jane left already.
Unfortunately.
I'm looking
Hey,
at
Billy. Billy. I'll take a picture. Thank you. All right, guys. Thank you. Thank you.